Good morning. I'm Ann Ariano, and I serve on the board of the DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I welcome everyone to our service this morning and welcome visitors to our open and inclusive community. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another as we explore these paths. I would like especially to welcome our guests today and welcome again those who have visited us before. Visitors, it is the custom of our congregation to invite you to stand and give your name and where you're from if you feel comfortable doing so. Are there any visitors who would like to introduce themselves today?
I'd like to introduce my son Matthew, who's visiting from Chicago to help me celebrate my birthday.
Great, welcome. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you. Please join us after the service for coffee hour, actually lemonade hour in the summer. We would love to have a chance to get to know you better. Our Director of Religious Education, Steve Cooper, and our Congregational Life Coordinator, Mary Law, and all of our members are eager to meet you. I will also be present after the service in Creeves Hall and would be happy to speak to you as well. Our service can be heard outside the glass doors at the back of the sanctuary. Should anyone feel the need to leave the service for any reason, there are chairs provided for your convenience. As we begin the service, please silence any electronic devices. There's one more very special announcement. Following the service today, please stay with us for a moment in the sanctuary as we share thanks and fond memories of our recently retired music director, Bonnie Brewster, before continuing the celebration down in Creeves Hall. Please enjoy the special music today that Bonnie herself specially selected for the service. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Please join me as Pat lights the chalice in stating our seventh principle. We light this chalice to affirm our respect for the interdependent which we are a part. Hello all. I'm Susan Camasta from the Green Sanctuary Committee. Perhaps you remember that last year at this time, our committee presented a service to tell you about our proposed statement of conscience. We understand that we are a part of the earth, not apart from it, and thus accept the responsibility to live and act with respect for the planet and all of its creatures. Since then, information on living more sustainably has been provided to church members via the newsletter, forums, movies, and more. In addition, we hosted events including Pathways to Sustainable Energy for Faith Communities in March. Spurred on by a speaker from this event, Jean McCullum and George Peck collaborated with ComEd to have energy-efficient lighting installed, finishing up this week. Furthermore, in keeping with Statement of Conscience procedure, we solicited feedback from the congregation in the days and weeks after last summer's service and discussed these new ideas within our group. The feedback can be summarized as follows. Although I like the statement, how is it different than our seventh principle upon which we already agree? We felt that the answer was that our statement added the idea of action. We discussed and decided that adding explicit action to the statement was prudent. With our changing climate demanding attention, we've revised it as follows. We understand we are a part of the earth, not apart from it. Our seventh principle calls us to address the dire threats of climate change, species extinction, and rapid environmental degradation. Let us renew our commitment to live more sustainably and protect our planet and all of its creatures. Our goal today is to share with you what's on our minds as we move forward on our proposal, hoping that you will engage us in conversation and ultimately vote for acceptance of the Statement of Conscience during our upcoming church year. Please note the half sheet in the order of service so you can compare the two statements. And over the next year, help us wordsmith the statement so it's just what we wanted to say. Now, I'd like to invite the youth. Oh, sorry. Never mind. Worship again. All right. Now I'd like to invite the youth and anyone that's young at knees to come sit with me while I read a little story. Thanks. This is called Snowboy and the Last Tree Standing by Hyawin Oram. Snowboy and his ice troopers were saving the polar bear king from the evil one-eyed emperor when Greenback Boy came up. "I know a better game than this," he said. "It's called Ka-Ching, and it starts in the forests." "Okay," said Snowboy, "I'll bring my cloak of many uses." The forests were dark. Greenback Boy's eyes lit them like moonlight. "Okay," said Greenback Boy, "this is the game. We cut down all the trees. Here's your axe." When nearly all the trees were gone, Snowboy thought, "We can't breathe without trees." And he left one standing, hidden by his cloak of many uses. "Okay," said Greenback Boy, "all the trees have gone to be made into things. In return for them, we got this. Look, piles and piles of ka-ching. With it, we can get anything we want, but we want more, so on to the oceans." The oceans were deep and ever-moving. Greenback Boy's eyes lit them like lighthouses. "Now," he said, "we catch all the fish. Here's your net." When nearly all the fish were caught, Snowboy thought, "What's a sea without fish? A dead sea, that's what." And he let 2 slip free when Greenback Boy wasn't watching. "Okay," said Greenback Boy, "the fish have all gone to be canned. In return, we got more ka-ching than anyone could ever dream of. With it, we can..." But in that moment, a terrible storm blew up, drowning his words. As there were no trees to snag its wings, it swept all before it, tossing the mountains of canned fish into the empty oceans, where they sank and rusted and were lost. "Back to level nowhere," said Snowboy. "Now what?" "No worries," said Greenback Boy. "We're still the ka-ching kings. I kept it all safe in my strongbox." "Thanks," said Snowboy, "but it's no good to us now. We can't breathe ka-ching. We can't eat ka-ching. And I've got to get going." He gathered his ice troopers and the Polar Bear King, and together they trudged across the wrecked land until they reached the last tree standing, saved from the storm by the cloak of many uses. Gently and lovingly, they nursed it out of its loneliness and charmed a swarm of bees to build a hive in its branches. They made a boat and went to sea and saw that the last 2 fish had had lots of little fish who were growing up to have little fish of their own. And when they got back to their tree, they found one of its seeds had taken root. "Hooray," said Snowboy, "2 will become many, many millions. Good work, Team Us." But wait, who's this limping along? It was Greenback Boy, looking pale and as thin as usual. "You are right, Snowboy," he said, sniffling. "You can't eat ka-ching, and I'm starving." "Then you're in luck," said Snowboy, showing him the beehive. "There's honey. But ask nicely and leave some for tomorrow, or you will be hungry again." And with that, Snowboy spread his cloak, and it was a cloak of many uses. It flew them home, where Snowboy fell happily asleep, knowing he and his team had saved the world from the fantasy of ka-ching. For now, at least. And now we invite you to rise in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn 1057 in the teal hymnal, "Go Lift It Up." Bonnie will play it through once, and then we will sing it together as the children go to classes.
and reads one of our 7 principles of our faith. These principles represent our values and serve as a moral compass in our lives. Unitarian Universalist congregations and the Unitarian Universalist Association formulate a statement of conscience as a call to action. These official statements become the guideposts for upholding our 7 principles. A statement of conscience establishes our position on an issue and permits the minister and church members to carry this message to the wider community. One of the panels hanging in Creeves Hall represents our congregational stance on reproductive rights and civil marriage. Whenever we read the 7th principle, we are recommitting to live our lives with respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. We all know that our planet is in danger. Climate change is now an existential threat to all life on Earth. Having an awareness of our impact on living things and the environment is only a beginning. Living intentionally and practicing an earth-conscious lifestyle is essential, but that won't be enough. We are called to do more. In the months ahead, we will begin to outline personal practices and congregational actions that we can take in order to bring our lives into closer alignment with the 7th principle. The UUA and other UU congregations have identified many ways that we can become involved in the work that lies ahead. We will be asked to live more sustainably and to bring these practices to our families, friends, and neighbors. We will be asked to educate ourselves and to carry this knowledge to the communities in which we live. We will be called to political activism, to follow lawmakers and environmental legislation at the local, state, national, and international levels. We are making a pledge to deepen and recommit ourselves to uphold the 7th principle. This statement of conscience will provide the framework for those efforts. Each of us is a necessary part of this work. Our involvement has never been more important. In the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Adoption of a statement of conscience by our congregation is a formal process which is outlined in our church's constitution. Susan has summarized some of the progress that we have made so far towards this goal. Our congregation will need some additional study and dialogue about the statement before it can be put to a vote. In the end, 75% of our church members must vote in favor of the statement for it to be adopted. I think each of us will be working hard to make this a unanimous vote.
Hello, I'm Pat Clancy. I love to read, and for the past few months, I've been exploring my personal library and rediscovering old books to love again. In preparing for today's service, I looked at some of the many writings on nature that are on my shelves and decided to focus on a Sand County Almanac, an environmental classic composed of essays by Aldo Leopold. Moving through the seasons, Leopold describes his memorable experience in nature, his observations of birds and animals, and their effect on the delicate ecological balance. My favorite essay from this section is called The Good Oak, which discussed the cutting down of a 100-year-old oak tree, which was struck by lightning. Now slated for burning in the home fireplace, the old tree must be cut. Decade by decade, as the work proceeds, the author chronicles the historic events occurring on the land that correspond to the growth rings of the tree, working backwards from the Great Depression through the Civil War and the many less dramatic events that occurred during the life of the tree. Leopold then proceeds to write about man's destructive influence on the environment and makes a strong plea for the development of a land ethic. He was born in 1887, which is my grandparents' generation. Since I am now myself a great-grandmother, it is interesting to observe that his plea for a land ethic is as urgent today as it was when first published in 1949. shortly after his untimely death. He was educated at Yale University and in his professional life worked for the Forest Service, beginning in 1909 in New Mexico and Arizona. Later, he moved to Madison, Wisconsin, where he was director of the Forest Products Laboratory. The inspiration for his nature writing was his family home in Sauk County, known as the Shack, where he and his family spent much of their free time. He was one of the founders of the Wilderness Society in 1935, and he speaks of the conservation movement as being in the embryonic stage, although his work was preceded by the considerable contributions of John Burroughs, George Perkins Marsh, John Muir, Henry David Thoreau, and Theodore Roosevelt, along with the establishment of numerous state and national parks in the late 19th and early 20th century, Yellowstone being the second in the world and the first established in the U.S. in 1872. So we might ask, what is this philosophy of a land ethic espoused by Aldo Leopold? I will quote here, "All ethics so far evolved rest upon a single premise, that the individual is a member of a community of interdependent parts. The land ethic simply enlarges the boundaries of the community to include soils, waters, plants, and animals, or collectively, the land. In short, a land ethic changes the role of Homo sapiens from conqueror of the land community to a plain member and citizen of it. It implies respect for his fellow members and also respect for the community as such. It is inconceivable to me that an ethical relation to land can exist without love, respect, and admiration for the land, and a high regard for its value. By value, of course, I mean something far broader than economic value. I mean value in the philosophical sense. The key log which must be moved to release the evolutionary process for an ethic is simply this: quit thinking about decent land use as solely an economic problem. Does this sound familiar? Ka-ching. Examine each question in terms of what is ethically and aesthetically right, as well as what is economically expedient. A thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise. It goes without saying that economic feasibility limits the tether of what can or cannot be done for land. It always has, and it always will. The fallacy the economic determinists have tied around our collective neck, and which we now need to cast off, is the belief that economics determines all land use. This is simply not true. Ka-ching, ka-ching. The mechanism of operation is the same for any ethic: social approbation for right actions, social disapproval for wrong actions.
Good morning. Cheryl Clayton here again. Next week we'll get to talk about SMILE, but today I'm talking about global warming and climate change. Last year at this time I reminded you that the waves are rolling toward the shore. Well, they still are. Ask anyone in New Orleans. Science tells us the storms, the hurricanes, the wildfires, and the droughts will be getting bigger and stronger as the ocean waters warm. The flooding will be more severe because the storm has more water to dump more rapidly. Sea level rise is causing serious problems in southern Florida already. In Miami Beach, seawater comes up through the sewer drains during high tide. This octopus made its way into a parking garage in Miami Beach as long ago as November 2016. According to Al Gore, Miami is the #1 city in the world today at risk of losing the most in assets due to sea level rise. Miami stands to lose $3.5 trillion in assets due to potential damage. They are already rebuilding some of their city streets at a higher level and pumping seawater back to the sea. And still, the waves are rolling toward the shore. A week ago, Saturday, Congressman Bill Foster organized a discussion on climate change at North Central College. Some of you were there. Hi, Jean. Congressman Sean Casten participated, as did our Senator Dick Durbin, along with several other experts in the field. Considering the idea of a belief in science, Congressman Casten found the idea a bit ridiculous. He asked, "Do you believe in gravity?" He also stressed the urgency of our task to deal with the root causes. One question he posed to the audience, and I'll pose it to you: name the next member of this sequence. A, B, C, okay, then 2, 4, 6. The correct response is 8. This is a non-linear issue. We must concentrate on goals rather than paths. Our goal is to get carbon out of the atmosphere. We see unbelievable destruction in the name of progress. We allow our natural resources to be taken, turned into other things, supplying money to corporations that already have too much. How to explain that we allowed this to happen? Shall we sit by doing nothing to stop it? We should be taken to the streets now, before the water is gone, the trees are gone, the crops are gone. It's already too late for the polar bears. Do we wonder why it's called Mother Earth? Throughout all history, it has given birth. This bluish-green ball gently floating through space has potential for life, like no other place. We still have some time to undo what's been done. With wind turbines turning, we'll cut our emissions, clean up with care. Our mission becomes to heal and repair. Sun is abundant. We capture a piece of its power. Sun will amply supply us through all of our time.